Yeah!
How are you? He's like the face of X Games, Winter Games, you know, snowboarding, surfing, skateboarding.
His entire life, 30 years he didn't take citizenship in any other country because he believed that apartheid would end. And so he's like, I'm going to do everything I can to get the world to want to learn and know about what South Africa is, what Africa is.
So when he
Through the
was
music.
playing music, that was...
All of his songs sort of story told South Africa. The way he talked between songs was getting people educated about South Africa, about apartheid. Because a lot of people don't realize that, during the 80s, the American government fully 100% endorsed the apartheid government.
Wow.
Reagan was 100% down. And ironically, if you Google Joe Biden Congress speech, apartheid, he was the only congressman to stand up. We can't do this. Here's what this government really is. And he's getting yelled at by these other members in the Senate in Congress who are like, that's not true. And he's like, no, this is true. It informs many of the layers of who I am as a person, especially during this time. But my dad, that was. So the first time I went surfing in South Africa was when my dad went back in 1991.
First time back for him?
Yeah, he had not been home for 30 years.
That must have been emotional.
And he moved home. And then like 8 months after he moved home, he decided to do a homecoming tour. And he said, hey, I want you to come down and be one of the road managers and come work on this tour and come see your home for the first time.
Wow.
Imagine getting off of a plane in the country of your ethnic heritage for the first time, and that same day I met my sister and my grandfather, who I'm named after. My grandfather was Salema.
Oh my God.
I met them in that day, and a whole family at 19 years of age that I didn't know I had.
Oh, it gives me spine tingles. That is incredible.
It was radical. And surfing also hadn't been legal for black people. Like you couldn't black and white people couldn't go to the same beaches because of something called the Separation Act. And a few months before we went on this tour, all apartheid laws were starting to be done away with. One of them was the Separation Act. And I got there like 5 months after this law has changed, but economically there hadn't been an opportunity for black South Africans to even participate. I showed up and I was like, I've been looking at these waves in the magazines forever, and bought a board in Durban, went and paddled out, and people were like, what?
Really? Like you were potentially the first black person to paddle out.
I was
in those
potentially
spots.
one of the first black people that they saw surf in Durban.
Wow.
And the cops, after 3 days, tried to arrest me on a charge that you're not allowed to jump off of the pier. You've probably seen videos of New Pier.
Yep.
And for 3 days, they sat around being like, how can we get this dude out of here?
Great. And like all these white surfers are jumping off the pier, and that's actually against the law.
Anyway,
Well, I went to South Africa this last summer, right before the Pro Tour. So we like.
Oh, yeah. Did you surf?
Yeah, dude. We posted up on J Bay and Vic Bay and.
How wonder of the world is Jeffreys Bay?
Incredible. I mean, really interesting place to go with my kids and just show them the townships.
Give them a context of where you were at.
Yes, and
interact with the people.
Yes, and then just like geographically, such a mind-bogglingly
I tell people all
incredible
the time,
place.
like people who go to like the same countries all the time. I'm like, have you been to Africa?
Right.
They're like, well, I mean, I don't know what's there. I'm like,
everything.
Literally everything. Like without that everything, there's nothing else. Like,
yes.
Go. If you have the means, go. But I think for a long time, people in this country, their perception of Africa was like wild discovery.
Yep.
Like animals and mountains.
Right.
And no idea or beginning concept of people, culture, history. Like, it's just so interesting that the largest continent on the planet, most of the world knows the least about.
Right.
It's a trip. I'm stoked you got to go.
Yeah, I mean, it's just scratching the surface, but yeah, 3 weeks was not long enough.
No, yeah, you leave yearning. You know, I've had very few experiences in this culture where I've ever gotten to spend very much time doing the thing that I love alongside people who look like me.
Yeah.
You know, they have a handful across each landscape.
Right, with day here, day there, one person.
And if I'm on the mountain and I see another black person on the mountain snowboarding, we make eye contact, it's gonna be a moment.
Yeah.
We're gonna be like, where are you from? Where are you from? You wanna take a run?
Yeah. Well, I've been like Black Ski Week came to my home mountain, and it was just way cooler. Like the atmosphere and stuff, and I think that like there should be more diversity. But what's not talked about is it's actually way more fun. Like to go, it's like why we travel. You go to travel, you meet different people, and then there's different music, and there's different food, and there's different ways of life, and so that diversity is like we're like missing out on this opportunity to have a way cooler experience.
I think people's resistance is when there's two things that happen to people when they find out that like, oh, this thing has only been this way for these other darker reasons that I wasn't aware of.
Right.
Either I want to play a part in helping to change that.
Yep.
And I look at the opportunity for diversity, inclusion.
Yeah.
To be an opportunity for growth, or yeah, that's cool and everything, but you're taking something away from me.
Yeah.
And those are the things that I see viscerally in this conversation, and that I see people getting, quote, I hate the word, but fucking triggered by this conversation we're having. I mean, my DMs or comments sometimes on posts, as we're having a bigger conversation about race in these spaces, people are so unafraid to be like, that's not a real thing, and you're playing a race card, and we don't need to have politics in here. It's like, I'm sorry, but the idea of equity in race, as for us as Americans, that's not a political conversation. Now, I would respect you 10 times more if you said to me, that makes me uncomfortable, because now we get to have a conversation.
Yeah.
And why does this make you uncomfortable? What's your background?
Yeah.
Let me give you some perspective on what this experience is for me and for people who look like me, and maybe some historical context to the manner in which this community that you love so much, that you get up on a mountain and take a deep breath and like it fills your soul, and it's built all this connection and relationship that you love when you wake up and you look at your town. But you've been unaware that like quietly, it's been like this.
Yeah.
To a bunch of other people. I want people to be able to feel free to say that they're uncomfortable, I don't know why this is, or explain it to me. But this thing of like people reading some, worst thing about the internet and the best thing about the internet is that everybody got a voice.
Right.
And people read something that feeds their ideas and they think that's a fact, and so they're gonna reinforce them.
Yeah.
I'm happy that people are having this conversation. I see the industry now. It feels like people want to make a change. My thing has just been like explaining to them like, cool, please don't look to check a box to make your brand look cool. Understand that like you got to build this into your personal culture, into the DNA and culture of your brand, et cetera, because then it spreads out, and this is something that's going to take time. You just got to be committed to learning and growing in this for the rest of your life. And if you do that, guess what? You're not going to be uncomfortable anymore.
Right.
Because you've made that choice.
The more diversity of ways of doing these sports, the different vibes, the different cultures, I mean, that's when life gets fun.
Yeah.
Like, those are the fun parties to go to when you got like people from all different backgrounds.
Your favorite meals are the ones where you ask people like, what's in here?
Totally.
I've eaten this particular thing before, but it's never tasted like this.
Yes.
I know that's what the opportunity is for us when it comes not just to snowboarding, surfing, but just the outdoors in general.
Yeah.
I think the sad part is from a historical perspective and education perspective, people don't realize that the outdoors in America and the outdoor lifestyle was crafted to be a safe space for white people.
Yeah.
And when they do find that out, if they do find that out, and they see the receipts that like, no, here's what it is, that's when they're like, I had no idea.
Yeah. And really for me, it's more, I just feel like I need to like keep reading.
Yeah, that's why I said like, my advice to people constantly is like, don't freak out that you don't know all the stuff.
Right. I mean, I think just the truth telling is super important in all facets of our society right now, and we got to kind of own up to that.
Like, people are like, America's the best country in the world. Sure, yes. It's also flawed as fuck.
Totally.
Like, just like your family has got some shit in it, right? That's dark. That's America.
Right.
It's a great country. Also, some really shitty things have taken place, and we either acknowledge them and figure out how those things aren't going to happen again, or we continue to like be like, no, that's not a thing, and you got to love what it is today. That'd be great if a bunch of people weren't affected by those things that took place that still are a part of the culture of who we are at a systemic level. And for me as a one of the lone black men in our industry, I faced it every day.
Right.
Like every day that I've decided to continue to stay in this thing that I loved, it also has come with like, I gotta do these things, or I gotta be extra good here in order for people to believe that I'm supposed to be here.
You're reminded of the color of your skin on the daily, and that's...
My first experiences on the mountain, my biggest dread wasn't what the mountain was gonna throw at me. It was, what's that long lift line experience gonna be like? Who's going to say what to me?
Wow.
How are they going to be looking at me? And it happened on the regular everywhere I went, and people thought they were being funny. Sometimes they thought they were being funny. Sometimes they were just downright upfront racist. And it was just something that I had to negotiate and keep in my mind when going to do the thing that is supposed to be my escape, where I leave it all behind. People like that word tolerance. Like, oh, if we could all learn to tolerate each other. Tolerance is like putting up with.
Totally. That's a...
Right? It's like,
That's like a cop-out, like, worst case scenario, let's try to tolerate.
Yeah.
That's like when the two kids hate each other in school and like, we're just gonna try to make it so you tolerate.
Jimmy, you sit over there, and Billy, you sit over there. You're in the same room, but pretend like you're not there and tolerate each other.
Right.
Acceptance is an entirely different thing. And that's the part that I hope that people could get to be able to be excited like about what you said about what's possible if we sort of leapfrog the easy thing of like tolerance is just like getting in the door.
Yeah.
Acceptance is like, okay, what's this going to be?
Or how about embracing?
Right. Acceptance, embracing.
And it's interesting too, because I've been talking to Ryan Hudson, who's a black snowboarder that I've sponsored for since almost the start of Jones. And
I watched your live with him, by the way. It was amazing.
Cool. Oh, sweet.
And I was
Thank you.
I was really grateful and proud of you that you chose to use your platform in that way. Like, yes, you sponsor him, but something said to you like, okay, I need to have this conversation in a way that the world can see.
Well, I'd been talking to him a ton, and every time I talked to him, I learned so much. And I'm like, dude, and it took a while to get Ryan to be like, there's a point where this needs to be shared with the world, because
his story is powerful beyond comprehension.
Totally.
And I didn't know that part of his story.
Right.
You're like, wait a minute. There's a like Big Mountain dude whose beginning of his life started from being homeless on the streets in San Diego and adopted and going through the foster system, etc. Like, what?
Right, and ends up on Denali.
And ends up on Denali? What the fuck, snowboarding?
Right, why haven't you heard this story?
Why
A guy
haven't you-
that's in the media.
This story.
Because he's actually a really good snowboarder.
And he rips.
Yeah.
But like, you want to inspire people to get excited about this, our thing? It's right there.
Yeah, and so a big takeaway from Ryan that he's like, this stuff is passed down. Like, there's not a lot, like, how did I get into snowboarding? Well, my parents got into skiing. How'd they do that? From their grandfather. So it's like, you got to start the first one.
We create opportunity.
Yeah.
To expand the landscape. And you such a great point that he helped you see about like heritage and it being generational. We haven't had access.
Right.
And I'm the first generation in my family that got access because my parents made a weird ass decision to move to this place.
Right.
I fell in love with it.
And this is how you do it, is the other thing. Like, I came out west, it's like, all right, you sleep on the floor, you got to get your pass by this date and get to the mountain before the snow's too warm, and we take turns driving, and there's just all this little nuance and skill set that again is passed down, which I'm sure with you connected with. I'm assuming there's some friends that were like, hey dude, I got it figured out. You come, this is how we do it.
I had friends and I followed and I dovetailed, and obviously getting that opportunity at Transworld changed my life.
Yeah.
Because suddenly I'm in the bubble.
Right.
Even once I became the X Games guy,
right,
people would come up to me and be like, how are you so good at like knowing all the tricks and stuff, like, and the athletes, like, ESPN teach you that? They must have taught you that because you don't do it, do you? And people will walk up to me and say that with a straight face, but you don't do that stuff.
Right.
And I would always ask them like, well, why don't you think I do it? They'd be like, well, I mean, you can say it.
Yeah, totally.
And it's changing. I mean, one of the conversations I've been having within the industry with, the big mountains and the big mountain conglomerates is like, you guys have exchange programs and that you do with Spain and Argentina and New Zealand and Australia that I can walk up to any lift in any part of the country and like, hey mate, how you going?
Right.
Which is great.
Yeah.
Have you thought about how to reach out to local communities to build the pipeline of what the lifestyle can look like and you can work in this space, etc.? Like,
very smart.
Let's do that. Let's figure out the ways to bring the mountain to these communities that aren't far from you, but they just need to know that you want them there. So those are the conversations that I'm having, and I imagine in a weird parallel way when you're talking about like these subjects where people get so fired up, you witnessing and seeing the way the mountains are changing.
Yeah.
You can't ignore the changes. So you start doing the research, et cetera, and you're like, I'm gonna figure out how to be a voice for this thing, selfishly in the interest of like, I can't lose my space.
Right.
So I guess I'm a climate dude now.
Right. Well said. And I mean, I think you are with all this racial justice and stuff. I mean, we haven't talked about, but I mean, it seems like you're like, well, I guess I got a deal.
Yeah. I tell people all the time, like, I don't wake up in the morning going like, I want to argue with some people about race.
Right. Well, we have that same like.
I'm sure you're not like.
You can get along with anyone. I can get along with anyone. And so yes, my idea of a good time is not arguing, and the toxicity of social media. Anytime you. Anything of like real meaning now has two gnarly sides. And I've learned, like I saw this snowboard in my town. Someone, I don't know who did it. They have this cool snowboard. It's got Black Lives Matter. It's on their front yard. I took a picture of it. Underneath it, just put hearts, nothing, a black heart, red, white, and blue heart. This is a great opportunity to speak up about it in a very kind.
In a way that literally fits.
Yeah,
who
me,
you are.
it's a snowboard with nice art piece, Black Lives Matter, and I stayed away from all the stuff. A couple days go by, I come back online and check my Instagram, 1,000 comments. And I know when I see the numbers like that, that just means there's a war going on. And at that point, you're just like, I mean, I can't, if that gets you that pissed off, like.
Again, I think it is so fear-based and a lack of credible information based on, and then an opinion based in critical thinking, in like weighing out the thing. So if you're just listening to it from a perspective that fits you only,
yeah.
And in an issue like that, like there are no two sides.
The Black Lives Matter one for me, yeah, I can't, the fact that something like that makes people that angry.
I tell people all the time, like, yeah, you might not agree with some of the tenets of what the organization is.
Right.
Cool. But the idea, the simple statement of Black Lives Mattering, and we believe in equity for all, that's not something you can't, there's no two sides about. So if I give you all of the facts and give you the historical context for why Black people in America have had these type experiences, especially with the entities that we all pay taxes for all of us to be protected by.
Yeah.
If only a certain segment of the population is experiencing protection from them, and here's some, not just the empirical data, but also here's the experiences of all these other people who are telling you, here's what my experience with the police is. When I tell people that the only 2 times in my life that I've had to beg for my life have been at the hands of the police and on the other side of their guns, they're like, but I'm like, I'm just another Black man in America when you don't see me on television. And I have gotten lucky enough to have gotten pulled over and have a cop pull up next to me, roll down the window and be like, in that energy, and then get the light on me and be like, oh, Sal Masekela. Bro, 5 seconds ago,
yeah,
we were about to be in it. Like
right.
You were just in that energy and then it flipped. But the only times that I've had to beg for my life and say, don't kill me, please, has been with police having guns trained on me.
Ugh.
Once in a 7-Eleven, reading magazines, and I was in there too long.
Oh my God.
Apparently
so
the guy who was behind the desk who called the police on me and my friend reading basketball and snowboard magazines, and next thing you know, we're surrounded by cops with guns to our heads. And the other, when I used to clean car dealerships in Carlsbad at night, and someone said they saw a Black man in a car dealership as I'm pushing a trash can with vacuum cleaner, and next thing you know, the whole cavalry comes over, and I got shotguns trained on me, cars jumping center medians, and they come shotgun to the back of my head, arms behind my back, on the ground, cuff me up, take me, put me on the street, sit me there for an hour, trying to figure out how I have this setup and this van and all this equipment like I'm here to rob cars.
Oh my God.
We demand accountability for criminals. We demand it. Why is it that we can't ask for just that same accountability within the culture of the people that we pay to protect and serve us?
Yeah, I mean,
I'm not anti-police. I want y'all to like hold yourself to the same standard that you hold us to.
It's just interesting what creates someone that, is it training or is it the police? Like, how does it get to that level where someone in a bright store in 7-Eleven comes into kids with guns drawn, reading a magazine? It's just...
You look at all of these stories, right? All of these names that have been hashtags. The George Floyd situation, the only reason why I think we're having all these conversations now is because it was 8 minutes and 46 seconds long. We're in the middle of COVID, and you could not have seen it, and you could not have felt it and seen that person as a human being, for the most part. Obviously, people have figured out ways to justify, well, he was a drug addict, so he deserved to die and be murdered and executed. people are just asking for the system to change in a way so that this thing serves everyone equally, because its origin and its roots were based in something much different and was based in racism. And if we don't elevate the position to the point where like the training and the culture that's built into this is, yes, you're out to fight crime, but you're also here to serve the community. And this is risky, but your life shouldn't come to the point of knee-jerk reactions based on some preconceived bias about these certain types of peoples from different cultures, to the point where if you feel scared enough, you can justify killing them because it's in their nature, or all of these other things that we've built in to make people feel comfortable with being like, well, he probably did something that he deserved it. But anyway, this has become a whole other show.
Yeah, sorry. Right.
No, but it's
I'm glad. To me, I just am like, it's just the whole, just mind-boggling to me, and I know, and I commend you. And my advice to you, as someone who's been getting yelled at for a long time online on climate, is like, you are kind, you're civil, you're on the right side of history. And at the end of the day, I'm sure you go in there and it's like a bunch of people are defending you. More people have your back than don't have your back.
Yeah,
and
I can't go in there and like nitpick and block everyone. But if you say some foul shit about my family,
then
and
get
like
rid
whatever,
of them.
then
Yeah.
you gotta clear your space. But for you, with POW, etc., does it surprise you that so many people, even within the community that you're defending, also think that this thing is not real and you're some sort of quack? That's got to be weird.
One thing that's helped me is like understanding what has created these angry climate deniers.